Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and we're back at it with spoiler season for TARKIR DRAGONSTORM. This is the rest of all of the spoilers that were spoiled on day one. We did cover all of the spoilers that were introduced in the debut stream that Wizards of the Coast put up. So all of those initial spoilers, I think there were like 24 of them, are in another video. If you haven't seen that already, please check it out. I'm going to link it in the comments and in the description. But this is every single other card that was announced on day one. Now, before we dig in really quickly, I just want to let you guys know I am a few hours away from catching my plane to head to an event called The First Shattering, where I'll be celebrating the launch of a brand new card game called Wonders of the First. And I'm going to be gone for like 5 days, so it is entirely possible that I won't be able to put out another full-length spoiler video detailing all of the spoilers day by day like I normally do until I get back late Sunday evening. If that's the case, if that happens, we will still be putting out a ton of spoiler shorts every single day, so I'm going to make sure to link the playlist to that down below. If you normally just check out my long form content and you don't check out my shorts, we're going to have a ton of shorts still popping up every single day because it's going to be a lot easier for me to record audio, send that to my editor Finn, and he's going to get that stuff up. It's even possible Finn might make an introduction and do a few spoiler shorts himself in the interim while I'm gone, but there will definitely be a ton of uploads still every single day, and I'll be posting to the post section, the community section, letting you guys know what's going on with me at the event and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be a fun time. I might even be doing some live streaming from the event. We do have other videos that will be popping up throughout the week, but it is going to be a busy week, and I might not be around for the rest of spoiler season proper. And then next week, we're going to be playing a ton of catch-up if that's the case. But spoiler shorts will still come. Look forward to those. With all of that out of the way, please like the video. Help me get it out to more people. Subscribe if you're new because more content's on the way. And let's dig in. We're going to start here with Bloomvine Regent. This is a 4/5 dragon with flying. Whenever this creature or another dragon you control enters, you gain 3 life. Not super good, but it is worth noting that this is a green creature that has flying, and we don't get those very often. Now, it's attached to an omen called Claim Territory for 1 green and 2. If you don't know how omens work, it's sort of like a new slant on adventures. Whereas with adventures, you would play the adventure part of the card, the instant or sorcery portion of the card, and then it would go into exile, and you can play the other part of the card whenever you want. With omens, you can play the instant or sorcery part of the card. Instead of going into exile, it gets shuffled back into your deck. So basically, if you happen to redraw it, you can just replay the omen over and over and over again every single time you end up drawing back into it. And then eventually at some point, if you decide you want to play the dragon, in this case, the creature side of the card, you can just play the normal card. It goes into play, and then no more loop. It doesn't go back into your deck or anything like that. Now it's just the creature for the rest of the game, and it is what it is. So a really cool mechanic trying to fix some of the, I think, unbalanced OP-ness of adventures in a way. But there are still ways to abuse this, you know, taking note of the fact that it does stick the card back into the library every single time, helps you avoid mill and stuff like that. That being said, this omen in particular is 1 green and 2. You search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards, reveal them, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, and then shuffle. Super, super good. I actually feel like this card is better to just play the omen over and over and over and maybe never play the dragon in a ramp deck. And I wouldn't be surprised if this makes the cut in standard. Very cool card. But next up, we've got Mardu Devotee. This is part of a cycle. We're actually going to go over the whole cycle first. This is a common. It's a 1/2 human scout for 1 white mana. When this creature enters, you scry 2, and you can pay 1 colorless mana to add a red, a white, or a black to your mana pool, but you can only activate it once each turn. It's worth noting you can activate it once on your turn and once on your opponent's turn if you need to, which is really cool. But being a common, this is mainly just a way for limited decks to get more access to playing 3-color draft decks and sealed decks without having a problem with your mana base, you know? So it's really good at being that. That being said, a 1/2 for 1 that also scries 2 when it enters isn't nothing. so I think this card's pretty cool. The next one is Temur Devotee. This is a 3/3 human druid for 1 blue and 1 and has Defender, and it has the same ability but for Temur colors. And then next up we've got Abzan Devotee. This is a 2/1 dog cleric for 1 black and 1 and has the same ability but for Abzan colors, and also has 1 black and 2 return this card from your graveyard to your hand. I actually like this one a lot. Just a 2/1 for 2 that can trade early on, can come back, infinite value later on in the game. Just keep bringing it back, you know, seems pretty cool. Next up, we've got the Jeskai one. This is Jeskai Devotee, a 2/2 Orc Monk for 1 red and 1. And it has the same ability for the Jeskai colors, and then also has a Flurry ability. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Anything with a Flurry ability just means it has something that's going to trigger when you cast your second spell each turn. So we can expect to see a lot of cards that care about casting your second spell, which is an interesting archetype, and it'll be cool to see if that actually ends up making a comeback in Standard and ends up being good enough to see play in Standard. Not necessarily this card in particular, but just the concept of a Flurry mechanic. Next up, we've got the last one, Sultai Devotee, a 2/1 zombie snake druid for 1 green and 1 with Death Touch, and again, it has that same ability to filter a mana of Sultai colors. This might be the best one. A 2/1 Death Toucher for 2 is nothing to scoff at. It can hold off some of the biggest creatures, and sometimes can just swing through without your opponent wanting to block it too. So getting access to your fixing ability on something like this seems really cool, but we're going to move on. Next up, we've got Stormplane Detainment. This is an enchantment for 1 white and 2. When it enters, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. This is just the newest iteration in a long line of O-Ring variants, right? Nothing to write home about, but it is going to be some decent limited removal, so it does that. Next up, we've got Dragonback Lancer, a 3/3 human soldier with flying for 1 white and 3, and it also has Mobilize 1, which means whenever this creature attacks, you create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Every card with Mobilize is going to make specifically 1/1 red warrior creature tokens, and every single time it does, they are always going to have the ability to be sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step. That's just a part that's built into the Mobilize mechanic. That being said, still really good for like Aristocrats decks, Sacrifice decks, being able to make tokens every turn that you're just going to lose anyway, and you can use as free sack fodder for any of your Sacrifice payoffs or Death payoffs. Seems really good. Having a common here that just makes one every turn, and it's a 3/3 flyer, is actually kind of decent for limited, and I wouldn't be surprised if this makes the cut as like the 22nd, 23rd card in a lot of draft decks. But next up, we've got Rally the Monastery. This is an instant for 1 white and 3. It costs 2 less to cast if you've cast another spell this turn. You get to choose one. Either create 2 1/1 white monk creature tokens with prowess, or up to 2 target creatures you control each get +2/+2 until end of turn, or destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. I kind of love this. I'm pretty sure it's a cycle, and I'm wondering if all of the cards in the cycle have the same conditions for getting a cost reduction. In this case, you get the cost reduction if you cast another spell this turn, because I think it's a part of the Jeskai, the Jeskai clan, and that's kind of an ability that makes sense within Jeskai, that casts 2 spells in a turn thing. So I wonder if there's a different way to get a cost reduction depending on which clan the charm, because they're kind of like charms, right, aligns with. So it'll be super interesting to see the rest of them, but just the versatility of all 3 modes of this makes it pretty good. Next up, we've got Duty Beyond Death. 1 white and 1 for an instant. As an additional cost to cast it, you have to sacrifice a creature, and creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. You put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I actually like this a lot. In a deck where you want to sacrifice your creatures to get death payoffs, you have a way to do this here. You buff up the entire team with counters that stay forever, and the whole team gets indestructible until end of turn. If they decide to like Wrath of God or something, you just sack one creature instead of losing your whole board, and they all get indestructible and survive it, and they all get bigger. And then your opponent's going to really regret playing that sweeper, unless they play Sunfall, of course, which is just the bane of my existence. But we're going to move on. Next up, we've got Bearer of Glory, a 2/1 human soldier for 1 white and 1. During your turn, this creature has First Strike, and you can pay 1 white and 4 to give creatures you control +1/+1 until end of turn. This is just a nice little filler common. It's going to be super useful in Limited to fill in those last few slots of your deck when you're running out of like really good cards to play. But yeah, this will be fine. Next up, we've got Salt Road Packbeast, a 4/3 beast for 1 white and 5. That's a lot, but it does cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control, and when this creature enters, you get to draw a card. I actually think this might be one of the better commons. If you just go super wide with creatures super quick, you can play this for like 4, 3, maybe 2 mana, and you draw a card when you play it. If you can play this for 3 mana and get a 4/3 and draw a card, that's just insane, and you only need 3 creatures in play to do that. So, yeah, the more I think about this card, the better it is. That being said, it does kind of have a fail condition, right, where if your opponent is constantly removing your creatures and you're not able to get anything to stick, and you don't get that cost reduction, this could just sit in your hand and never see play. That can be a problem, but I highly doubt that's going to happen in Limited, and in Limited, that's where this card's going to be best anyway, although I do see the possibility of this maybe inspiring some kind of crazy standard brew. It might be too cute to actually make a splash, but it would be fun in like Convoke decks. Just go super wide, super quick, and then play this. Actually, Boros Convoke was a very relevant deck type rather recently. There is a good chance this might actually see play in standard, which is very rare for a common. But if you're playing the Boros Convoke deck and you're going super wide, you could play this like as early as turn 3 for like 1 or 2 mana. Draw a card and get a 4/3, and that seems just insane. Yeah, I think this card has potential. Let me know in the comments if you actually think this might see standard play. I think it actually has the potential to, which is crazy for a common. But next up, we've got Static Snare. And you'll notice that it has a different set symbol. That's simply because it's a special alternate art of the card. Available as like a promo and promo packs and stuff like that. But it is a part of this set, and I believe there's one of these, one uncommon like this in each of the colors that we'll see in this spoiler video. This one is 1 white and 4 for an enchantment. It has Flash. When it enters, you exile an artifact or creature an opponent controls until this enchantment leaves the battlefield, and this spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. So this is kind of like Leyline. The Leyline Flash Exile. Why am I drawing a blank? Oh my god. Leyline. You know what I'm talking about. I can't believe I can't remember the name of that card. I've played it so many times. Anyway, this is kind of like that, except instead of getting a cost reduction for how many land types you have, it gets a cost reduction for each attacking creature. So it's going to be much better when you're up against aggressive decks and you're trying to play defensively. Also, it can only hit an artifact or creature and not, you know, any non-land permanent, like Leyline Binding. Leyline Binding, that's the card. Good God. So it's definitely not as good as Leyline Binding, but it shouldn't be. It's only an uncommon, right? It's going to be super good in Limited. It might even be worth trying to play in Standard in certain decks that really want access to instant speed removal while still having them be enchantments. You could still play this for super cheap, and it can be a 5 mana enchantment that triggers up the Beanstalk, that becomes a 5/5 if you target it with Zur, things like that. So as a supplemental, like maybe a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th copy of Leyline Binding, there is an outside chance this actually sees play in Standard, and I kind of love that. I hope it does, because I think it's cool. Definitely not as good as a Leyline Binding, but an awesome card. Next up, we've got Aegis Sculptor. This is a 2/3 bird wizard with flying and ward 2 for a blue and 3. Already pretty good in Limited, and it's an uncommon, so you can grab this up pretty easily. Although, if it ends up being a chase uncommon, maybe not pretty easily. We'll have to wait and see. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. that's kind of cool. Works with things like Insidious Roots and Ketramos, and yeah, I mean, you mostly want to use this in Limited, and you're not going to be playing those cards in Limited, obviously, with this. But there is an outside chance there might be some kind of crazy standard brew. Probably not, just because 4 mana is a lot, but there is value here. So, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Next up, we've got Agent of Kotis, a 2/1 human rogue for 1 blue and 1, and it has the Renew ability, which means you can exile it from your graveyard to get an effect. In this case, it's 1 blue and 3, exile this from your graveyard to put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery, though. So, pretty cool. It is just a common, but being able to play this on 2, trade with one of their creatures because you still have 2 power, and then have extra value in your graveyard just ready to pop off whenever you want to, seems pretty cool. Next up, we've got Dirgur of Cerberus Island Dragon. This is a 4/4 flying Ward 2 dragon for 1 blue and 5, which is definitely overcosted, but it's a big flyer that's at the common rarity, and it has an omen attached to it. So I actually think this is great, and it's even splashable with just the 1 blue, right? But what does the omen do? I guess that's depends. How good it is probably depends on how good the omen is. It's Skimming Strike, 1 blue and 1, tap up to 1 target creature, and draw a card. That's really good. This card's really good for a common. You can just shut down their offense, tap down their thing so they can't attack with it, draw a card to replace this, and it goes back into your deck. Honestly, you could just keep doing that for like ever. In Limited, this card's going to be nuts. I absolutely slam dunk play this in Limited. It replaces itself by drawing a card, puts itself back into the deck. It's automatic mill protection, because it can just keep going back in your deck for really cheap, although it does draw you a card when you play it, so I don't know how much mill protection that actually is now that I think about it. But still, in Limited, this is super splashable. You don't have to worry about a 6-drop being stuck in your hand forever, because you just play Skimming Strike if you can't play the dragon, and then eventually you get like a win condition in the air that's hard to kill because of the Ward 2. I love everything about this. This is nuts for a common, in my opinion. This is probably going to be the best common in blue, and you want to chase it in Limited for sure. But next up, we've got Riverwalk Technique, an instant for 1 blue and 3, and you choose one. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on their choice of the top or bottom of their library, or you counter target non-creature spell. This is really cool because it gives you the ability to have a card in your deck, in your Limited deck, that can counter non-creature spells without it being a wasted card if you don't need to counter a non-creature spell, or if you're in a situation where you're on the back foot and you can't just sit around and wait for a non-creature spell to counter. You have to be proactive and catch back up and not die. You get to just choose the first mode instead and get rid of any non-land permanent, and they get to put it on the top or bottom of their library. But even if they put it on the top, it's basically the same as if you bounced it and they skip their next draw, which is actually really, really good as far as card advantage is concerned. So I really like this card at instant. I think it'll definitely fill in that last 22nd, 23rd slot of your deck in decks that are looking for a little bit more removal. Next up, we've got Ringing Strike Mastery. This is an enchantment aura for 1 blue mana. Enchants a creature. When it enters, you tap Enchanted Creature. Enchanted Creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. And Enchanted Creature has pay 5, untap this creature. So, it's really cheap removal. Taps something down and doesn't let it untap for way less mana than we normally have to pay for those kind of abilities. But the downside is it gives our opponent a way to actually untap that creature by dumping a ton of mana into it. In this case, 5 mana. Which, I mean, if you're playing a middle-of-the-road creature, you're probably not going to want to invest 5 mana every single turn. But if you try to use this to take out someone's bomb, they're going to just keep coming at you with the bomb, right? It doesn't completely stop it. It just kind of messes with their tempo. So, I think this card is good. As common removal, this is good. If this was like one of the uncommon pieces of removal, I'd be less thrilled about it. But as a card that's just going to kind of fill in those last couple slots of removal if you're a little bit light on removal, I think it's fine. It works really well on getting rid of things, shutting things down as you're curving out so that you can have some breathing room. It just doesn't work super well at shutting down huge bombs that have an inevitability of killing you. But still, really interesting card at common. Next up, we've got Corroding Dragonstorm. Looks like there's a whole cycle of uncommon Dragonstorms, and they're all enchantments, probably for 2 mana. This one is for 1 black and 1, and when this enchantment enters, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, and you get to Surveil 2, which is just even more extra value just tacked on because. Also, when a dragon you control enters, you return this enchantment to its owner's hand. So, this is kind of cool in like Pixie decks. I don't know if it's quite good enough for Pixie decks because it doesn't really affect the board. It just helps close out the game quicker by draining and maybe gives you some card selection with the Surveil. So I don't think it quite makes the cut in Pixie decks, but it could be used in Pixie decks. It could be used in, Sacrifice decks, sack it to a Disturbing Mirth or something like that. Or it could just be used in Dragon decks. Again, just like all of the Dragonstorms, and I'll probably mention this in every Dragonstorm that comes up, really good if you're playing a deck with Leyline of Transformation, naming Dragon, and then a bunch of creatures that have the Eerie ability. Because whenever you play the creature, you get to return all of your Dragonstorms to your hand, and whenever you replay your Dragonstorms, you get to trigger all your Eerie abilities. That seems kind of wild. I don't know if that's too cute and maybe just a meme, but I think that would be super fun to build. Maybe we just play dragons, though. Maybe some of these Dragonstorms are just good enough just in a dragon deck. But moving on, we've got Caustic Exhale. An instant for 1 black mana. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you behold a dragon or pay 1. Beholding a dragon simply means you have to choose a dragon that you control or reveal a dragon card from your hand in order for it to count as beholding a dragon. So if you can't do one of those things, you have to pay 1 extra mana, and then target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. This is like a super cut down, right? In certain situations, it's just strictly better than cut down. Instant speed, 1 mana, -3/-3. And unlike cut down, if it's not enough to even just kill it on its own, you can still use this as a combat trick to make a big creature a lot smaller so that you kill it in combat. So there's a lot more versatility than cut down. That being said, if you don't have the dragon to show, it's going to cost 2 mana, and at 2 mana, it's just not as good as Virtue of Persistence. It's a much worse Virtue of Persistence, although it still is at instant speed, so it's not strictly worse. But for common removal, I couldn't ask for more than this, and I have a feeling this is actually going to show up in Constructed in decks that are using a fair amount of dragons, because I think it has the potential in certain decks to be better than cut down. Not in most decks. Most black decks, if they want 1 mana removal, they're still going to be running cut down, but in specific certain particular decks, I think this will be better than cut down and might see some play in standard. But next up, we've got Cruel Truths. This is 1 black and 3 for an instant. You Surveil 2 and then draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. This is kind of boring. We get a card like this in every set. It's nice that we get to Surveil, but I mean, it is what it is. Next up, we've got Strategic Betrayal. This is another one of those alternate art promo cards. This is 1 black and 1 for a sorcery. Target opponent exiles a creature they control and their graveyard. Not a creature from their graveyard, their whole graveyard. This is insane. This is insane because it can kill a creature without having to target it, so you don't have to worry about ward. You don't have to worry about hexproof or any of that stuff. Sometimes this can get rid of like a Valgavoth if it's the only creature they have out, which a lot of decks try to reanimate Valgavoth, and it is the only creature they have out, so that's really good. And speaking of reanimating Valgavoth, hitting their entire graveyard with the same card is nuts. I think this card, I'm going to go out on a limb and make a bold statement here. I think this card just existing in Standard is going to absolutely destroy any decks that rely on their graveyard and prevent them from being anything relevant in the meta. I think this might even have the power to put Omniscience decks on notice, and Omniscience decks are everywhere now. But if your creature removal that's actually just really good as removal, not only do they have to sack their creature, it's better than sack because they have to exile, but it's still kind of like sacking because you don't have to target it, they have to, is amazing. It's just like a better edict, and it just happens to hit their whole graveyard. Like, you just get to have your removal spell incidentally exile whole graveyards while it still does its function. Like, you don't have to use up a spot in your sideboard. You don't have to, like, use up card slots in your deck specifically on cards that get rid of graveyards. It's just built into your removal suite, which is just insane. Those are the kind of cards you need to make graveyards so obsolete that any deck that tries to use them, it's just really hard for them to exist. Like, Omniscience decks are going to have such a hard time in Standard because of this card. And I can't wait, because those decks are annoying. Roaming Boss, I'm talking to you. Alright, we're moving on. Next up, we've got Yathan Tombguard, a 2/3 human warrior with menace for 1 black and 2. Whenever a creature you control with a counter on it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose a life. What's cool is it doesn't say whenever 1 or more creatures you control with a counter on it deals combat damage. Every single creature you control that has a counter on it that deals combat damage to a player will draw you a card. Granted, you'll have to lose a life every time, but this is just sort of like a Gix at home, a budget Gix, right? This is actually really cool. And the menace means that if they only have 1 creature in play, it's actually pretty easy to swing in with this and draw a card off of it. Even if you only manage to do it the first turn you're able to attack with this, before they have enough creatures out that you don't want to put this thing at risk, even just getting through once with this and drawing a card without having to rely on any of your other creatures is really good. But the potential to draw cards just in general at the uncommon rarity is super good. You're definitely going to slam this guy in Limited. He's going to be super good in Limited. He might even see play in Constructed. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't know, man. Card draw is so good. Maybe in, like, the human tribal deck with, like, Alesha and stuff like that. You could do some really cool stuff with this. Get some card draw built in without having to slow down the pressure that you're putting on the opponent. Still stay super aggressive and get access to your card draw. That sounds pretty fun. Maybe we'll try to brew with it there. I think that's a good idea. But this is going to be nuts in Limited. Slam it. Play it. Don't pass it. But moving on, we have the red cards now. This is Rescue Leopard, a 4/2 cat for 1 red and 2. When this creature becomes tapped, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. Honestly, kind of good for a common for only 3 mana. Getting a creature that can sometimes trade up because of the 4 power and gives you some incidental rummaging so that you can dig through your deck to find your bomb or find the missing land drop you need or whatever the case may be. It's kind of nice. I think you might run this as like the 22nd, 23rd card in Limited. But next up, we've got Devoted Duelist, a 2/1 Goblin Monk with haste for 1 red and 1. And it also has the Flurry ability. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is actually really good, man. We've come such a long way from how crappy commons used to be. The fact that a common can be a 2 mana, 2 power hasty and just incidentally deal a damage every time you cast your second spell, that's great. That's great. We never used to get all of that on a single common for 2 mana. But I mean, power creep's a hell of a drug, so it is what it is. But I think this is awesome. If you're in a very aggressive deck in Limited, this is going to be nuts. But next up, we've got Seize Opportunity, an instant for 1 red and 2, and you get to choose one. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards, and up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+1 until end of turn. So some nice versatility here. You can either get some card advantage, or you can buff up your guys, use it as a combat trick, that sort of thing. It is just a common, but if you're low on combat tricks or card advantage, it is some nice value that you can add to your deck as your 22nd or 23rd card in Limited. Next up, we've got Sunset Strike Master, a 3/1 human monk for 1 red and 1. You can tap it to add a red mana. You can also pay 1 red and 2, tap it, sacrifice it. It deals 6 damage to target creature with flying specifically. I think this card is really good. I think any one of these things by itself wouldn't be super good, but the fact that you get them all on one card, I think is way better than people might realize. I think it might get overlooked. The fact that it's a 2-mana creature with 3 power that can trade up decently well is super relevant. The fact that it's just a mana dork with no hoops to jump through, no stipulations, it just taps for mana, is also awesome. You can probably use this to help you play your dragons that much earlier, a whole turn earlier than you otherwise would. And then also, if they happen to have a dragon or any other creature with flying, you can just sack this to kill it. So you put it down on turn 2, their 3/3 doesn't want to swing into you, then you tap it for mana to play a dragon, maybe you tap it for mana to play another dragon, and then eventually when they play a big flyer to block your dragons, or that can swing past your dragons, or whatever the case may be, then you can just sack it to kill the thing. It already did its job. So much value, so versatile, just so much this card can do. It might even see play in Standard. A mana dork? A 2-mana human mana dork? I don't know, man. Human Tribal's looking real good. Human Tribal's looking real good, but this is a slam dunk in limited for sure. Next up, we've got Summon Intimidator. Summit Intimidator. It's a Yeti. It is not Shiva or Bahamut. This is a 4/3 Yeti with reach for 1 red and 3. When this creature enters, target creature can't block this turn. This card's fine. It's nothing crazy, but it is only a common. Getting a 4-power, 4-mana spell, creature with a keyword at the common rarity is actually not too bad. This will hold off a lot of dragons in the mid game, which is really nice. But also, if you get it a little bit later and you're not on the defensive and you're just looking to get through and win the game, making their best blocker not be able to block is not nothing as, incidental value built into one of your commons. So I like this. Next up, we've got Channeled Dragonfire. This is a sorcery for 1 red mana. It deals 2 damage to any target. So strictly worse shock, right? Because it's sorcery speed, but it also has Harmonize. So for 2 red and 5, you can replay this from the graveyard. The way Harmonize works is it's basically Flashback, except you can tap a creature in order to reduce the cost of the Harmonize spell by an amount of colorless mana equal to the power of that creature. So if you tap a 1-power creature, this is only going to cost you 6 mana to play from the graveyard. If you tap a 5-power creature, you can play this from the graveyard for 2 mana. In fact, if you wanted to, you could pay 3 mana, tap a 5-power creature, and go 2 damage to one thing, 2 damage to another. It's pretty versatile. I like that. I like that there's just extra value you can get from the graveyard as when you can finally fulfill the condition. And I like that you don't need a creature in order to play it from the graveyard. It just helps you play it earlier when it's more relevant. But it's possible if it's just the late game and you have a ton of extra mana sitting around and you just need a mana dump and you don't want to tap your creature, you can just pay the 7. So I like everything about this card. It's going to be picked pretty high, I think, in limited, just because it's reusable removal, and that's always super good. But next up, we've got Roamer's Routine. We're moving on to green. This is a green and 2 sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, which is definitely overcosted, but it is just a common. It helps you mana fix, and it has Harmonize for 1 green and 4. So you can cast it from your graveyard for its Harmonize cost, and you may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by X, where X is its power, and then you have to exile the spell. So getting to recast it potentially for just 1 green mana and getting another basic land onto the battlefield tapped is pretty nice. Another really cool way of using cards like this, and specifically this one, is you don't even need to hard cast it, right? You could just discard it or self-mill it into your graveyard and then tap a 4-power creature, just pay 1 mana and ramp a land out for just 1 mana. And if you have the right kind of deck where you don't mind tapping your 4-power creature, Kona, that seems really good, right? using Harmonize to tap down survival creatures seems like really good value, especially if you didn't even have to pay the overcosted hard cast cost of the card to begin with in order to get it into your graveyard, and it just incidentally wound up there with some self-mill or whatever, with some surveil or whatever the case may be. That seems really good. I think this card could see some play. Next up, we've got Rite of Renewal. 1 green and 3 for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Target player shuffles up to 4 target cards from their graveyard into their library. Exile Rite of Renewal. Pretty interesting. 4 mana, get 2 things back, and any player puts 4 things from their graveyard into their library. The thing that's a bummer is you don't get to pick the 4 cards. Whichever player becomes targeted gets to pick the 4 cards. So if you wanted to use this to like take specific cards out of your opponent's graveyard because they're going to get value out of it, you can't do that. They get to choose. That being said, if they only have 4 or less cards in their graveyard, then they are forced to put the thing you want them to put back into their deck, which is nice. But I think a lot of times you're just going to, you know, choose yourself, put your own stuff back into your deck, increase the consistency of your draws, make sure you're drawing into that much more gas, which is pretty interesting. I like this card. It's fine. Next up, we've got Dusyut Earthcarver, a 4/4 elephant druid with reach for 1 green and 5, which is really expensive, but when it enters, it endures 3, which means you can put 3+1/+1 counters on it, or create a 3/3 white spirit creature token. Okay, so it's not a 4/4 reach. It's a 7/7 reach for 6, or a 4/4 reach and a 3/3 token for 6. That's really good any way you slice it, right? It is definitely expensive. A bit too expensive to be super consistent, but it's at the common rarity, right? So I think it's fine. You might fit one of these in as your 23rd card, just to get some extra value if you don't have quite enough threats in your deck. I think it's cool at common. But next up, we've got Undergrowth Leopard, a 2/2 cat with vigilance for 1 green and 1, and you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. This is really nice versatility, especially being at the common slot. Having access to common artifact and enchantment removal without having to waste a card on artifact or enchantment removal, because it's also a 2/2 vigilance creature for 2, is really nice. It just means you can have main deckable artifact or enchantment removal without wasting slots, which is super good, especially at common. You can snap them up pretty easily towards the end of the draft. I kind of love that. But next up, we've got Encroaching Dragonstorm. This is the green Dragonstorm, and I was wrong about all of them costing 2, because this one costs 1 green and 3. When it enters, you search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. And when a dragon you control enters, you return this enchantment to its owner's hand. This is pretty good. Grabbing 2 basic lands for 4 mana seems kind of on rate. It reminds me of the battle that we got in, was that March of the Machine that we got the battles in? I think it was March of the Machine. But there was a 4 mana battle that did the same thing, and then if you attacked it and took off enough defense counters, you could flip it into a creature. This doesn't get to flip into a creature, but it does get to return to your hand and be recast, and keep doing that if you keep playing dragons and keep fetching more and more lands, which seems not awful. I don't know if this is quite good enough for constructed, but in limited, this is going to be really good in decks that want to ramp and play just huge giant beasts, possibly huge giant dragons, as soon as you possibly can. Seems pretty cool for that. Next up, we've got the colorless cards, finally, and there are a decent amount today, decent amount of artifacts. This is Boulder-Born Dragon, a 3/3 artifact creature dragon with flying and vigilance for 5 mana. Honestly, not bad when you take into account the fact that it's colorless, so you can put it in any deck at all that you draft. It can be nice filler, and then it also has an ability whenever this creature attacks, you get to surveil 1. So a little bit of extra value tacked on as well. Honestly, not awful, especially in a set where there are going to be a bunch of flyers because it's focused on dragons. Being able to make sure you can get, you know, a last minute flyer in your deck, even if you're in a color that doesn't have a lot of flyers, might be really nice. But next up, we've got Jadecast Sentinel, a 1/5 artifact creature ape snake for 4 mana. It has reach, and you can pay 2 mana, tap it, put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. I feel like we get a card like this in every set, where it's some kind of a generic creature, generic artifact creature that allows you to have an activated ability to put cards from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Kind of works as mill protection if your opponent's trying to mill you out, which can be nice, but it's also sort of just filler. Next up, we've got Watcher of the Wayside, a 3/2 artifact creature golem for 3 mana. When it enters, target player mills 2 cards, you gain 2 life. Not awful, especially for a colorless creature. Getting a 3-power creature for 3 mana in colorless is not as bad as it might seem. It's nowhere near as on rate as, you know, a creature that has color in its mana cost. But it can be played in any deck, so you can't really expect it to be. But getting some incidental life gain and getting to mill 2 cards, whether you want to fill up your graveyard because you have value from it, or you want to just mill your opponent out quicker, can be nice. Next up, we've got a cycle of monuments, one for each clan. We're going to start here with Abzan Monument. This is an artifact for 2 mana. When it enters, you search your library for a basic plain, swamp, or forest, reveal it, and put it to your hand, and then shuffle. Honestly, not awful. I kind of love that. And if you flicker it, you get to do it again. So maybe you can play it in a deck with something like Nahiri's Resolve, just flicker it every turn and get a bunch of lands. That could be cool. But what makes this card interesting is obviously the sacrifice ability in the colors of Abzan. So pay 1 green, 1 black, 1 white, and 1. Tap and sacrifice the artifact. Create an XX white spirit creature token, where X is the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Activate only as a sorcery. So being able to just fix your mana, make sure you're hitting your land drops, and then have this thing that can be sacked to make a big creature later on is actually pretty good. And it's just another really good way of making sure you stay consistent with your colors and can play everything and aren't going to have a problem playing a 3-color deck in Limited. But I even think some of these cards might be playable in Constructed. Even if you're not using it for its actual intended sacrifice ability, you could just play this to fetch a land and then have it as sacrifice fodder for a normal sacrifice deck. Maybe play like a Disturbing Mirth and sacrifice this thing. Being able to ensure that you're making your land drops while also giving you sacrifice fodder seems kind of okay. Could also be good in go-wide decks that specifically want a bunch of artifacts. Maybe with, you know, something like Mendicant. I don't think you'd use this one with Mendicant because it's not in the Azorius colors, but you get my point. There's other things you can use this with that don't necessarily care about its sacrifice ability, but it could still give you enough value to be worth it in those decks. And some of these monuments might be better at that than others, so let's check out the other ones. The next one we have here is Jeskai Monument. Again, 2 mana artifact. When it enters, search for a basic island, mountain, or plains. Reveal it, put it into your hand. You can pay 4 mana in the colors of Jeskai, tap and sacrifice this artifact to create 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying. Activate only as a sorcery. Getting 2 chump blockers or 2 tokens to then sacrifice in your sacrifice deck could be pretty cool. Also, since they have flying, maybe they could get in for your last few points of damage and win the game for you. So, pretty interesting. Next up, we have Mardu Monument. You know how much I love Mardu, or at least you should. So this is going to search for a mountain, plains, or swamp card and put it into your hand. You have to pay 5 mana in the colors of Mardu and tap and sacrifice it for its sacrifice ability. And when you do, you create 3 1/1 red warrior creature tokens. They gain menace and haste until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Now what's cool is these do not have to be sacrificed at end of turn. Most of the 1/1 warriors that we're making in this set from the keyword ability that makes them will not make 1/1s that stick around. They'll all have to be sacrificed at the end of turn. The ones that this makes do not have that problem. You just get 3 1/1s that stick around for as long as you want them to. They have menace, they have haste, they're good sack fodder, they can get in for some extra damage. Just kind of really good. I really like that. But next up we've got Sultai Monument. This is 2 mana for another artifact. When it enters, it's going to find you that swamp, forest, or island, and you can pay 5 mana in the colors of Sultai, tap and sacrifice this to create 2/2/2 black zombie druid creature tokens, but activate only as a sorcery. I think this card is especially good in potential zombie tribal decks, and I do think zombies are on their way to becoming a relevant tribe again. We got some zombie support in Aether Drift, and it looks like we're going to get even more zombie support in TARKIR Dragonstorm. And I feel like zombies are one of those tribes that are going to sneak up on us. They're going to get just a little bit more support every set, and not jump out at you in any one particular set. And then all of a sudden, you're going to realize, whoa, zombies have like a ton of gas in Standard right now. We need to be building zombies. I can kind of see that happening with zombies. And this is a cool card. This could potentially be a part of something like that. Next up, I think this is the last monument. This is Temur Monument. And this is going to search for a forest, island, or mountain and put it into your hand. And then you pay 6 mana in the colors of Temur, tap, and sacrifice this to create a 5/5 green elephant creature token. Activate only as a sorcery. I really love these cycles of monuments, being able to fix your mana, being able to make sure you're hitting your land drops instead of missing out, and then giving you extra value later on in the game is awesome. And I just love that there are artifacts that are sitting around that can be bounced and replayed to get even more lands, or can be sacrificed, you know, for that value. I just think there's a lot of cool ways you could potentially use some of these monuments, and I'm excited to explore that in the future. But next up, we're moving on to multicolor cards. I promise there are some rares to go over. They just haven't come up yet. But this is Gurmag Nightwatch, a 3/3 human ranger for 3 mana in the colors of Sultai. It is also using hybrid mana, so you could play this in a 2-color deck and instead spend 4 mana to play it, right? If you played this in Simic, it would be 1 blue, 1 green, and 2 potentially to play this. So it is kind of versatile. You could even just play this in a deck that's not running any of the colors. You could play this in Boros if you wanted and just pay 6 colorless mana to play it, which is kind of awesome. I love that about these cards. But it's just a 3/3 human ranger, and when this creature enters, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of those back on top of your library, put the rest into your graveyard. I burped. I'm tired. I'm sorry. I need coffee. Gurmag Nightwatch understands. I think the best part of this card is the fact that you get to put a couple cards into your graveyard, and you get selection on those cards. I think if you're playing this in a deck that cares about the graveyard, that's trying to put gas into the graveyard, or has any kind of synergies that use the graveyard, I think this card gets a lot better. I think that's where it can stand out. That being said, it is just a common, so it's not supposed to be anything super good. It's just going to kind of fill in certain gaps in your deck if you're in Sultai, or maybe one of the 2-color combinations. But next up, we've got Marshal of the Lost, a 3/3 orc warrior with Death Touch for 4 mana in the colors of Orzhov, and whenever you attack, target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. I like this a fair amount. I don't think it's quite good enough to see Standard play, but in Limited this is awesome. A Death Toucher is good regardless. Being able to swing in and buff a dude, but have Death Touch to protect your own guy so that you're less worried about swinging in with your dude to get that trigger, actually lines up super well. Your opponent doesn't really want to block this guy, but if they don't, you're going to keep getting the triggers every single turn, and even if they do block this guy and trade with it, then you have another guy that's got a huge buff that's coming through, and I think that could be really good, deceptively good. It's not insane. It's not going to be in Standard or anything like that, I don't think, knock on wood. But in Limited, I think you could do a lot worse than to run something like this. Next up, we've got Reigning Victor. This is another hybrid mana spell, creature rather. This is a 3/3 orc warrior for 3 mana in the colors of Mardu. And again, you can pay any combination of hybrid mana in order to play this, so it doesn't have to be in a Mardu deck. And it has Mobilize 1. Whenever this creature attacks, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token that you have to sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step, which is nice for a common. A potentially 3 mana 3/3 that does that every time it attacks at the common rarity is already pretty good, but it doesn't stop there. When this creature enters, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So it even gets some extra value when it enters, giving, you know, your best creature indestructible and a power boost so that it can swing through without your opponent being able to do much about it. Seems kind of good. This honestly seems like a lot of value tacked onto a common. That being said, it is still a common. It's nowhere near as powerful, you know, as some of the uncommons and obviously the rares. And it's not meant to be at the common rarity, but for a common, I think this is really, really good. If you're low on 3-drops, you need to fill out your curve in Mardu, I think you could do way worse than to run a guy like this. I think he's super cool. But next up, we've got Stalwart Successor, a 3/2 human warrior with menace for 1 green, 1 black, and 1. Whenever 1 or more counters are put on a creature you control, if it's the first time counters have been put on that creature this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. This is really good. In limited, I think it's a little too costly and or slow for constructed, although I could be wrong about that. If you're in a counters matter deck though, just getting a free +1/+1 counter the first time you put counters on something every turn seems good. You can also trigger it once on your opponent's turn as well, which is kind of interesting. I like that about it. And we've already seen ways in this set to put counters on creatures that aren't just +1/+1 counters. We saw the vampire already, the 3-drop vampire in the debut video, which if you guys haven't seen that yet, that's linked in the comments and in the description. Those are the first batch of cards that were shown today, before all of these cards that we're going over now were released. So definitely check those out. But there was a 3-mana vampire that was shown that you can exile from your graveyard to put like Death Touch, Lifelink, and Flying counters on a creature, and that could trigger this. So some really interesting potential for a card like this, and I definitely want to play with it. But next up, we've got Purging Stormbrood, and this is a multicolor card because it has a different colored omen attached to it. So first of all, this is a 4/4 dragon for 1 black and 4, nice and splashable. It has flying, it has ward, pay 2 life, and when this creature enters, you remove all counters from up to 1 target creature. This is super cool. A lot of times you can get rid of, you know, beneficial counters from your opponent's creature, get rid of a bunch of +1/+1 counters or whatever the case may be, but you can also remove detrimental counters from your own creatures. And I don't have a good example to use off the top of my head, but if you have ideas about any card in standard right now that has detrimental counters on your own creatures that you'd be able to remove with this, definitely let me know in the comments, because I know there's definitely potential out there for that. I just can't think of an example off the top of my head. So let me know in the comments. But this has an omen attached called Absorb Essence for 1 white and 1. It's an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink and hexproof until end of turn. That makes this card nuts. This card's going to be super, super good in limited. Like a very, very high pick. Even just giving something +2/+2 and lifelink in response to your opponent trying to use removal on it, because you also get the hexproof, is bananas. Not only do you survive the removal, but now you're swinging in for even more damage, and you're gaining a bunch of life from it. And then this just goes back into your deck, and then you can draw into it and do it again, and again, and again. You keep getting access to this combat trick, this way to save your creatures over and over again, potentially, if you can just draw into it again. And then later on, if you want, you just have a flying win condition that, again, is super splashable, only takes 1 black mana in the mana cost to play, and has some versatility connected to it. It's hard to get rid of because they have to pay 2 life to target it, and you get to remove counters from things. Like, this card just does so much for an uncommon, and I kind of love it. This is going to be a slam dunk in limited. Pick it super high because it will not table, and I would not be surprised if this actually sees some standard play. Mostly just because you could just reuse the omen and draw into it again and reuse the omen. I don't necessarily think the creature side of this is super good for constructed, But I think there's a chance that some of these omens might be good enough strictly on the merit of being able to draw into them again and recast them again as the omen. And that's super interesting. It's really hard for me to gauge the power level of something like that until we get to see it in action. But I think there's a chance some of these omens will see some standard play simply on those merits alone. But next up, we finally have the rares of the day. This is United Battlefront, a sorcery for 1 white and 3. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to 2 non-creature, non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is basically Collected Company, except instead of finding creatures, it finds non-creature, non-land permanents. This is so crazy. You can use this in pixie decks to find any of your fodder for your pixies, or find your temporary lockdowns, or find your Liliana Planeswalker. Like, you can find so much gas with this. You can find your Caretaker's talents in your Urabrask's forages in your token decks, which we're gonna absolutely have to brew that, right? We're gonna have to go back to Boros or maybe even Mardu tokens with Caretaker's Talent, Urabrask Forge, United Battlefront, maybe Chandra in the mix, because the newest Chandra is actually really good with Caretaker's Talent because she can make those vehicle tokens every turn. That could be a deck. I just feel like there's so many ways to use this. That being said, I wish we could target rooms with this. I don't think we can, because it specifically targets a permanent card that has mana value 3 or less. And even though some of the rooms can have a spell that costs 3 or less when it's on the stack, the card as a whole is the combined mana value. It would be super cool though if we could hit like an Unholy Annex with this, but we can't, and that's a bummer. But I mean, the card is still super powerful, and I feel like it's just the tip of the iceberg when thinking of ways that we can use this card. I have a feeling there's going to be so many crazy ways to use this, so many ridiculous decks. You could use this in vehicle decks. This could be the card that pushes vehicle decks over the edge, because you could find 2-3 mana vehicles, put them onto the battlefield, and it's kind of a way to find creatures with this without actually finding creatures, which is super cool. If you have any other ideas about how we could use this and what kind of cards we could hit with this, definitely let me know in the comments, because I really feel like the sky's the limit with this card. I feel like it's super insane, and I can't wait to play it, but I'm also terrified that I'm going to be super annoyed running into this on the ladder constantly if it ends up being that good, which it probably will, because Collected Company was insane, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, we've got Dracogenesis. Now, it was sort of teased by Morrow before spoiler season officially started that we were going to get a dragon enchantment that was a dragon version of a popular zombie enchantment, and this is that dragon enchantment. I believe it's called, is it Flood the Roof? Something roof, and I forget the name of the card, dude. It's been a long day. I'm tired. I should be sleeping because I have to leave to hit a plane, get to my plane to get to the airport very soon, and I haven't slept. Instead, I'm making videos for you fine people, so I apologize. I don't remember the name, but this is that card. It's 2 red and 6 for an enchantment. You may cast dragon spells without paying their mana costs. On the one hand, this seems nuts. If you can just find a way to get this into play earlier, cheaper, somehow, you can just vomit out an entire hand of dragon spells, which seems nuts. But at the same time, Omniscience is already in standard, so if you're gonna cheat a Dracogenesis into play, why not just cheat an Omniscience into play instead? So it's hard for me to envision the best way to use this card. If you have any ideas about how we can use this card and have it specifically make sense in a scenario instead of using Omniscience, definitely let me know in the comments, because I want this card to be great. I want to build a crazy dragon deck that plays this and then just craps out dragons all day. I think it would be super fun. It's just hard to think of a way to use it where Omniscience just wouldn't be better. I guess in a deck that didn't use blue, maybe. One way I can think of making this card really good is we already saw a spoiler at Magic Con for a mythic dragon that has Storm and buffs up your other dragons like a tribal lord. And so I could see playing Dracogenesis, playing out a ton of dragon spells for free, and then when it's the last card in your hand, playing out that Storm Dragon and storming off for a ton because you were able to cast everything because they were all free. And then just go absolutely bananas with innumerable, absolutely metrically huge dragons. That could be bananas. But again, I struggle to envision a deck where it makes more sense to play this than Omniscience. So if you have ideas, definitely let me know in the comments. There has to be something, right? There has to be a sweet way to use this. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on it, so let me know. But next up, we've got Temur Battlecrier. This is a 4/3 Orc Ranger for 3 mana in the colors of Temur, and during your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. This is nuts. If you can get multiple of these in play, they count each other. So if you have 2 Temur Battlecriers in play, they each see themselves and another 4-power creature, the other Temur Battlecrier, and they each give a 2 cost reduction. So with 2 Temur Battlecriers in play, all of your spells cost 4 less mana. And that's not just creature spells, it's literally every spell you play. If you get 2 Temur Battlecriers into play, even if those are your only creatures, you can play an Aether Spark for free. You can play a Leyline Axe for free. Like, that just seems awesome. And if you can make copies of this, it gets even more consistent. Maybe you play the Hall Slinking. I'm too tired. The Hall Stalker, Stalking Hall Creeper, Sneaking Hall Creep in the Halls. That guy. The 2 mana blue guy that can't be blocked and then can become a copy of something when it deals combat damage. You can play that on 2. Play this on 3. Swing with it. Silent Hall Creeper. Silent Hall Creeper. Swing with the Silent Hall Creeper. Become a copy of the Temur Battlecrier. And then just start going to town. On turn 3. That seems crazy. Or maybe you could play Mockingbird and copy this with Mockingbird so that you have 2. Or really any clone spell at all. Seems kind of bananas. This could do some crazy stuff way earlier, way more consistently than you might think. And the coolest part about it is you're doing all of that while still putting a bunch of pressure on the board, right? You're still being super aggressive. It's still a 4/3 for 3. And I love the idea of being able to ramp or reduce cost, which is kind of the same as ramping, with cards that don't stop putting pressure on your opponent. You're just constantly still committing things to the board that you can swing in with, that you can trade with if you need to, that you can constantly pressure the opponent's life total with, and this just adds to something like that, and I absolutely love it. So some really cool ways to use this card, and if you have any ideas that I haven't thought of, definitely let me know in the comments. I think this thing is a slam dunk. But that brings us to our last card of the day. Teval, Arbiter of Virtue, a 6/6 legendary spirit dragon with flying and lifelink for 5 mana in the colors of Sultai. This thing is insane. Spells you cast have Delve. Full stop. Just literally every spell you cast has Delve. That's insane. That means you can just play everything for almost free if you have enough cards in your graveyard. This has the potential to be super busted. The thing that balances it out is it also has, whenever you cast a spell, you lose life equal to its mana value. And the downside to that, the particularly bad part of it, is it works for cards that you cast even if you don't use Delve to play them. It would be one thing if you lost life for each one time you delved, right? Each one cost reduction you got from delving, or each one mana you paid from delving. But no, you lose life literally when you cast a spell equal to its mana value, regardless of how you pay for it, regardless of whether you use the delve. So as soon as this thing hits play, everything is draining your life. You could put this to good use by playing it with a Death Shadow style deck. Maybe you could make a Rowan deck, although that uses red, so that doesn't make a lot of sense with the Sultai Dragon. But you could use that new vehicle, the Last Ride, that is basically a vehicle version of Death Shadow. Something like that could be cool. I think the best way to use this, though, is in a life gain deck. If everything that you're playing is gaining you more life than you're losing in order to cast it, it kind of makes up for the downside, and it still allows you to just vomit out your whole hand by delving, which seems kind of insane. So I think in the right circumstances, there could be room for this deck to actually see play in Standard, for this card to see play in Standard in a very specific deck. But that downside is insane, man. It's going to make it really, really hard to use, and I'm sure somebody will figure out some kind of crazy combo deck that makes this absolutely broken. But that downside is going to steer a lot of people away from trying, because it's not going to be as consistent as you think at first. Not unless you find just the right deck, just the right cards to pair with it that help mitigate those problems, mitigate those downsides. It is worth noting, it does have lifelink built in. So if you swing in and do 6 damage to something, anything, it doesn't even have to be an opponent, and you gain that 6 life, that does help you, you know, pay for 6 mana's worth of stuff that you're going to play. It just doesn't necessarily help you pay for the ridiculous cost reductions you want to get so that you can just play everything out of your hand, which is just going to drain your life super fast. But I'm sure there are ways to abuse this card. There's going to definitely be a deck. Someone's going to come up with something that abuses the hell out of this, that gets a combo win, that basically uses this as a channel, as a modern standard legal channel, to just like power out an automatic win out of nowhere. That will happen. I guarantee you that will happen. I don't know what it looks like yet. I don't know what cards you pair with it exactly, but it will definitely be a thing, and I will try my hardest to brainstorm that and see if we can come up with it for early access and be one of the first people to kind of try that deck and make it work. I'm not sure what cards to use with it, so if you have ideas about cards we could pair with this to try to get to that ending, let me know in the comments, because I think it could be wild. But that's going to do it for today's video. I just want to thank you guys so much for sticking with me to the end. It means a lot. Please like the video so that more people will see it and the channel will grow. Subscribe so you never miss any of my content. And once again, I will be away for an event for 5 days, which probably means no more long form spoiler videos until I get back, which is a super bummer. But there might be. I might find a way to do it while I'm down there. And we will definitely get spoiler shorts up every single day, so look forward to those. And we do have some other long form videos on the way, some content to fill in the gaps. I've got a couple decks coming and some other stuff that are kind of surprises, so look forward to a ton of more content coming this week, and I will see you guys later, maybe in South Carolina, if you want to come hang out with me at the first Shattering, March 21st through 23rd. If you want all the info, it is in a video on the channel. Check it out, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck text, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.